was in their hands and they could dictate what should happen in the newsrooms. And then that study then says that as democracy came, then the white men then allowed the black men to come into that space, the black African men that is, to come into that space. And the black African men then occupied seats of power. But then when they came in, it is as though the black men just were upper echelons of the newsroom. They still very much possess a lot of power, but we have also seen the emergence of black African men that you will see, that in they are the ones who are editors. They would be the one who are able to bring their other boy to come and be in the investigation unit, and therefore the black African women are sort of like outside of that network because it's a close network of the boys club, but also even in newsrooms where the boys club is prevalent. You can be a black African woman who works hard, by the way, who does great stories that are impactful, but you won't get the high five, well done. You won't get the front page, even though your story is big and deserves to be. So I speak about that, and that how this network, it does not matter. They can work for rivalry news publications for that matter, but they always meet, Puza Thursday outside of work. They might not play golf like how white men will go and play golf. And I'm not in any way saying that black African men don't play golf, but in the study, then it says that they would go and meet wherever in circles that close black African women, because maybe you and me would have to rush and make sure that the kids have done homework, prepare the kids to go to bed, and then they have the luxury of going. And in those gatherings of theirs, they don't only speak about what is happening in their social lives, but they speak about in the newsrooms. Oh, there's going to be an opening at XY news publication. So the person who's top of mind when that opening comes is not going to be Asanda Beda or Ebongekile Machupe. It's going to be a Tsepo, who is part of that network. So that's what I was exploring around that.
This Reuters Institute fellowship paper also noted that no black African woman leads any of South Africa's national mainstream print or digital publications. Tell us more.
Yeah, so I speak there about how after Nwabisa Makunga, who was recently the editor of Sowetan, after she left that role, she's now I think the MD at Arena Holdings, which are the owners of Sowetan Sunday Times and the likes, and Zingi Samkuma as well left the Sunday Independent. We currently, as you and I are having this conversation, there is no black African women journalist in any of the major print or digital platforms in South Africa. And this is not a new phenomenon, by the way. I say that even before Nwabisa Makunga was appointed, or Zingisa Mkuma was appointed, we don't know that. It's not something that is common in our industry, where you would have a black African woman leading a mainstream national. It's not there. It's unheard of. It is as though, and the women that I interview in my paper speak about, it is as though that other people, it is their birthright to progress to the top echelons of newsrooms, but black African women do not have that luxury. They never make it, and it's a systemic it's a systemic thing that has been there, that you will have black African men editing, you will have white men editing, white women to some degree. You have had your Feral Hafaji editing the City Press. You have had your Felicia Opel editing the Sunday Times. But have you ever heard, outside of the two black African women I have mentioned to you, have you ever heard of anyone black African women editing? No, you have not. So there's also that. And one of the women I interview in my paper asked the question is that, are media owners also complicit to this thing? Are they happy to continue with the status quo? Are they happy to say we will have these black African men editing, where even when a black African woman exits a position, she is replaced by a black African man or someone else, but not a black African man? So it's also that thing that you do not, it is as though the executives in these newsrooms or the media owners do not see value in black African women uh, 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 um, uh, 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 occupying these roles, to say, I see something in Mongekile. Let us mentor her for this next for this next position. Because, Asanda, I must emphasize, it is not because there is a shortage. There has never been a shortage of black African women who are great journalists, who are impeccable in their roles, but there has never been an appetite to trust them with these critical positions.
Do you think that through those publications that are in the periphery or the smaller print media companies, African women can still yield power to influence the media space, or does it have to be via mainstream media for there to be a tangible difference making?
Mm. I mean, look, there are black African women who lead regional newspapers and all of that. Well, even then, I mean, I think it's Isolezwe, I think it has a black African woman leading it. It's a regional newspaper in KwaZulu Natal, and Nwabisa Makunga was at the Herald. Even in the community media or the regional newspaper, there hasn't been a lot of black African women that you can count and say they have led. And I am not diminishing the role that they play in the regional newspapers, even though there hasn't been many of them. So I am not diminishing that role that they play. But we also have to be honest that the mainstream media, that is where you will have more eyes. That is where many people are drawn to those platforms, because they are big. They tackle national issues, which ultimately will have an influence in what is happening in our country. Compared to a regional newspaper that will carry the news of that local community. So it is important that we have black African women also being responsible in driving the discourse in the national publications, because ultimately, the big decisions are communicated in these national platforms. So you need to have the voice of black African women to be able to say, we will carry the story of a black African woman who was killed in Mtsambalala, in my village in Shankomo, that no one knows about, because I feel that there is an overemphasis of when white women are being killed, or that you will have they will splash national news. It will be a topic for days on end. But when a black African woman is killed in my village in Zambalala Shankomo, no one knows about that, because at the seat of power, no one really cares about a black African woman in Zambalala who has been killed, but they will care more about a white woman who has been killed, as if black women are not being murdered each and every day. So the thing of being in of heading a national platform and having a voice, it's not necessarily about we just want to have a, because you also need to drive the conversations and the issues that are being carried by your publication, because you understand even the background of black African women in society, and how they are marginalized, even their voices are marginalized, and how sometimes they are painted as victims in these national platforms, when some of them are doing great things in their respective societies.
You touch on the issue of pay parities between men and women. Is there more to this issue within the media space that goes beyond gender inequalities?
Mm. Yeah, I mean, the thing of gender pay, the gender pay gap is there. I think it's also not peculiar to our industry, and I think that is what I've also found about this paper. That though the lens is on journalists, I have found that women in other sectors have identified because with this, women in corporate South Africa have identified with this. So you would know that, the gender pay gap is there. But also, like in South Africa, you would be in a newsroom with a white colleague or a colleague of another color. You are doing exactly the same job, but that colleague is paid more than you. Or sometimes you are even their senior, but that white colleague is paid more than you. They are even able to say, when I come and work for your publication or your platform, these are the conditions that I come with. And nothing is, there is no debate about that. If XY is coming and saying, I want this in order for me to work for you, you will get that. Whereas with us Black women, you have to fight even to get a decent salary or increase when you know the value that you bring into. So the gender pay gap is a huge problem, but I do not think that it's solely within newsrooms. It's wide scale. Even in other industries where Black people are not paid salary or on par with their white colleagues.
In what ways will it cost media freedom and development if these gaps are not addressed? You already touch on certain stories that deserve attention go unnoticed, and they don't get that attention they need, with the example of a Black woman being killed and that not taking precedence in terms of reporting.
Mm. I think what I explore in my paper is that when Black African women do not seen in this do not get who are not seen in these spaces, ultimately they leave the industry. And the Black African women that I have spoken with, and some of them who have left the industry, they do tell you that it is not because I fall out of love with journalism. Some of them love journalism. It was a childhood dream, to work for some of the even publications they went on to work for. But at what cost? At what cost? At the cost of my mental health, at the cost of consistently being undermined, at the cost of consistently having to fight my way for the stories that I want to cover, at the cost of being abused not only by women of other color, but also being abused by Black African women who are my seniors. At what cost? And eventually, most of these women, at the first chance they get, when they get to that point of being tired, the first chance that they get to get out of the industry and go do other things, they take it. And that is why for me it's frightening, because when I entered the newsroom, like I was saying when we began this conversation, is that I saw people like Solima Pumolo who went on and I admired and were my mentors in one way or the other. So what are we saying? The young Black African women journalists who will enter the newsroom are not going to find someone who looks like them, are not going to find an early someone that they can bounce ideas off, or someone that can be their anchor, like how Black African women have been my anchors throughout my career. And that is an indictment, and that is scary to think about it, because there's something comforting, Asanda, I think you would agree, when you walk into a room and you see someone that looks like you. I will make an example in my fellowship. When I first walked in, there was all these white people. I never saw anyone that looked like me until my friend Ngina from Kenya walked into that room, and there was a sense of comfort because I could see someone that looks like me. So representation matters. You are not going to have newsrooms that do not have a Black woman, when women, by the way, even make up the majority of our country. So ultimately, people choose themselves and they live and they go and thrive in different industries. I can mention a number of Black
Yeah.
African women
Well,
who are,
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, we're completely out of time, Bongekile, but thank you so much for chatting to us. Thank you for this piece of work. And we continue championing for the representation of Black African women in newsrooms, in every kind of media space. Thank you so much. Bongekile Makupe is Deputy Politics Editor at News24, South Africa's biggest online publication. She wrote a piece or paper titled What It Means to Be a Black African Woman in a Newsroom in South Africa. Let's get our news headlines. 8:30 it is. Good morning, Onele.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective.
Well, thank you, Asanda. South Africa's Electoral Commission Chief Executive Officer, Simon Mabulo, has reported the registration of 34 new political parties since the 2024 general election. Mamabolo confirmed that municipal councils' 5-year terms will end in November 2026, with elections scheduled between November 2026 and January 2027. The Botswana government says it intends to raise over $180 million by the end of next month. The government says the money will be spent on addressing the country's public health challenges. And a judge in Brazil has declared the former President Jair Bolsonaro a flight risk and has placed him under round-the-clock surveillance while he awaits the verdict of his criminal trial. Channel Africa News, I'm Onele Tsinzi.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective.
Let's check in with the world of sports as we say good morning to Musibudi Makura.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Well, thank you so much, Asanda. For the final time this morning on Africa Rise and Shine, we'll start our sports bulletin this hour with some rugby news. So it was back to business for the South African Springbok women's side on Tuesday as preparations intensified for their pivotal Group D showdown against Italy at the Women's Rugby World Cup 2025. Now, training at the St. John Community University in York, the squad showed sharpness as well as spirit, with assistant coach Frenzel September praising their intensity as well as technique. Victory on Sunday would secure a top 2 finish as well as a guaranteed spot in the quarterfinals, also making this clash a defining moment in the South African campaign. September says the team has reset after their emphatic win over Brazil, but all eyes are now locked on the Italian challenge.
Oh, look, we scored some tries from the set piece, especially from our line-out and our scrums as well. However, there's 1 or 2 opportunities that we missed that we need to rectify. We pride ourselves on our mauling game, so we do want to get some more tries over this weekend. That's why we're here. But we know that the threat that Italy gave us as well. So we're looking forward to that challenge. But the focus for today was on ourselves, get ourselves ready. Yeah.
All right. Meanwhile, September also speaks more about the team's preparations ahead of Sunday's encounter against the Italians.
When we came here, we said everyone had good quality time to prep. They had good warm-ups as well. So I think everyone are going to give them a fair chance with the way they prepped. We're not going to underestimate any team here. We're not going to take the title as underdogs as well because we're here to win a World Cup.
On to tennis news now. Iga Swiatek advanced to the second round of the US Open with a loss of just 3 games, beating the world number 84, Emiliana Arango, 6-1, 6-2. Now, Swiatek, a US Open champion back in 2022, broke Colombian Arango twice in each set and didn't face a single break point on her own serve, closing out this one-sided affair in just 61 minutes. Now, the Polish second seed, who claimed a maiden Wimbledon crown in July before winning the recent Cincinnati Open, will face off with Netherlands' Suzanne Lamens in the next round of the US Open. Well, stay at Flushing Meadows. Venus Williams will compete in the women's doubles at the US Open, this after being awarded a wild card with Canada's Leila Fernandez at the age of 45 years. Williams returned to her home Grand Slam tournament for a record-extending 25th time earlier on this week. She exited the singles in a gallant first-round defeat by Czech 11 seed Karolina Mukova this on Monday, but will return to the Flushing Meadows courts with Fernandez, 23 years her junior. They will face with a 6 seed Ludmila Kinchenok of the Ukraine, as well as Australian Elaine Perez in the first round. Williams, by the way, won the US Open doubles titles back in 1999, as well as in 2009, both with her younger sister, Serena. And finally, in golf news, Augusta National Golf Club as well as the RNA yesterday jointly announced a new qualification pathways into the Masters as well as the British Open, offering invitations to winners from select national opens around the world. So the move by golf's most prestigious tournament organisers aims now to strengthen international representation in both majors, building on the RNA's existing open qualifying series that has operated since 2013. So the new system will begin immediately, with players able now to earn their way into the both majors through historic National Open Championships worldwide. The qualification criteria for the 2026 Masters, being held next April, now include invitations for winners of the Scottish Open, the British Open, the Japan Open, the Hong Kong Open, the Australian Open, as well as the South African Open. That's a wrap of your sports news this morning on Africa Rise and Shine. I do return in the next hour with the On The Move team with more sporting updates. As always, for any sports stories you'd like to share with us, simply send us an email. That's to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za. Alternatively, give us a call. The newsroom line is +27 11714 4459. For Channel Africa Sport, I am Musibudi Makura.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Africa, voici Abedi.
Oui, c'est moi.
Abedi est un passionné de musique dans l'âme. Il a un goût pour toutes sortes de musique et passe ses journées à écouter Channel Africa.
J'aime beaucoup la musique africaine.
Ok. Devinez quoi? Channel Africa veut aider Abedi et les mélomanes du monde entier à découvrir encore plus de musique incroyable. C'est pourquoi Channel Africa appelle les artistes africains à soumettre leur musique. Chers artistes, n'oubliez pas de nous fournir toutes vos informations pertinentes à l'email adresse musique@channelafrica.co.za. Les soumissions sont votre chance d'être entendues, mais elles ne garantissent pas une playlist. Toutes les soumissions seront soigneusement examinées pour voir si elles répondent aux exigences de notre station. Channel Africa, la perspective africaine.
Start your day right with Channel Africa Breakfast.
That smells delicious.
Live, 5 days a week.
Let's now clock in with the world of business as we say good morning to Buntle Headbush to give us details in the world of that.
Business news on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Thanks, Asanda, and a very good morning to our listeners. In our top story at this hour, the International Monetary Fund says it will be weeks before it can move forward with a waiver for Senegal's debt misreporting case. This as it continues discussions on corrective measures with the West African country. The IMF froze Senegal's previous $1.9 billion lending program after the nation's then new leaders said in September 2024 that they had uncovered debt misreporting that has since ballooned to more than $11 billion. A waiver is essential in order for the country to secure a new lending program from the IMF. Kenya Airways says it aims to finalize plans to raise at least $500 million in extra capital to expand and improve its fleet by the first quarter of next year. This after the airline reported a pre-tax loss of $94.3 million in the first half of this year. This is compared with a profit of almost $5 million in the same period last year. It attributed the loss this financial period to a drop in revenue and passenger numbers caused by 3 of its planes being out of commission for maintenance. South Africa's Minister of Electricity and Energy, Kgosientsho Ramokgopa, has expressed strong confidence that the new Integrated Resource Plan 2025 will be approved. The minister made the announcement at the Independent Transmission Projects Procurement Program conference. The IRP is a long-term plan designed to map out the country's electricity generation mix, aiming to balance supply and demand while considering environmental impacts and the total cost of electricity. According to Ramokgopa, the final policy-adjusted IRP 2025 represents a more than $126.5 billion investment that will define South Africa's energy mix for the future.
We will be approving tomorrow. The subcommittee of cabinet is looking at the what we call the IRP. I'm confident it will go through. It's a 2.2 trillion rand investment. We want to have add another 40 gigawatts of renewables in the next 10 years. 15 of those must come in the next 5 years. So it's an ambitious plan, but for it to succeed, it requires grid availability.
South African food services company Bid Corporation has reported a 6.5% rise in full-year earnings today, despite enduring a challenging and uncertain trading environment. The company, which operates in Australasia, Europe, and emerging markets such as China and the Middle East, and is the largest food distributor outside of the US, says its headline earnings per share rose to $145.40 for the year ending on 30 June. The U.S. Federal Reserve Governor Lisa Cook says she will sue President Donald Trump after he ordered her dismissal. Cook's lawyers say Trump has no authority to sack her. The BBC's Sarah Smith has the details.
The president claims an investigation into whether she lied on mortgage applications in order to obtain better interest rates gives him cause to sack her. But Ms. Cook has not been charged with or convicted of any offence. Donald Trump is furious that the Federal Reserve has not given in to his demands to lower interest rates. He has relentlessly attacked the chairman of the Federal Reserve, Jerome Powell, but not yet found a reason to fire him. If the president is able to remove Cook from the board, he can appoint her successor, and that would give him a majority of governors who support his ideas on economic policy.
And now for a look at the indicators this morning. $1 US in Nigeria is trading at 1,534 naira. In Botswana, it's 13 pula 32. Kenya, the dollar is trading at 128 shilling 46. And in Zambia, it's 23 kwacha 31. Moving to the BRICS countries, $1 in Brazil is trading at 5 rial 42. Russia, 80 rubles 47. In India, it's 87 rupees 65. China, 7 yuan 15, and South Africa, $1 is trading at 17 rand 62 cents. $1 is trading at 74 pence to the British pound and 85 to the euro. Looking at commodities this morning, gold is trading at $3,379 per ounce, platinum $1,339 per ounce, while the price of Brent crude oil is $67.32 a barrel. And those are your business news this hour. I'll be back with more in the next hour. For any business stories you'd like to share with us, please send an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +27 11 714 4459. For Channel Africa Business, I am Buntle Hetbush.
Business News on Channel Africa. The African Perspective. Wake up to the essence of the continent. Rise and shine on Channel Africa.
U.S. President Donald Trump ordered the Pentagon to ensure that each state's National Guard troops are resourced, trained, and organized to assist in the quelling of civil disturbances and ensuring public safety. This move is viewed as the clearest sign yet of Trump seeking to expand the U.S. military's role and responsibilities within domestic law enforcement across the country. This latest order, with Trump publicly floated the idea of deploying the National Guard to major U.S. cities that is often led by Democratic officials. Earlier this month, he ordered greater federal control over the nation's capital, Washington, D.C., deploying more than 2,200 armed National Guard members in support of local law enforcement. As Sherwin Bryce-Peace reports, officials in some jurisdictions decried what they view as a partisan, politically driven power grab by the president.
In his latest executive order, President Trump directed his defense secretary to ensure that the National Guard be trained, organized, and prepared to respond to civil disturbances within their jurisdictions, and additionally ensure the availability of a standing quick reaction force for rapid nationwide deployment. The move follows Trump's deployment of the Guard to Washington, D.C. under the guise of a crime emergency, despite police data showing violent crime has been on the decline in recent years, as Trump now hints at a possible deployment to Chicago in the state of Illinois.
Chicago is a disaster, and the governor of Illinois should say, President, would you do us the honor of cleaning up our city? We need help. They need help. They need help.
Sorry,
We may wait, we may or may not. We may just go in and do it, which is probably what we should do. The problem is, it's not nice when you go in and do it and somebody else is standing there saying, as we give great results, say, we don't want the military. They need help badly. Chicago desperately needs help. Just look at the crime statistics.
It remains unclear how the new order will be implemented, given that the National Guard already has reaction forces that deploy to assist states in law enforcement under the command and control of the state governor, a role J.B. Pritzker has in the state of Illinois.
We learned from the media that Donald Trump has been planning for quite a while now to deploy armed military personnel to the streets of Chicago. This is exactly the type of overreach that our country's founders warned against. And it's the reason that they established a federal system with a separation of powers built on checks and balances. What President Trump is doing is unprecedented and unwarranted. It is illegal. It is unconstitutional. It is un-American. No one from the White House or the executive branch has reached out to me or to the mayor. No one has reached out to our staffs. No effort has been made to coordinate or to ask for our assistance in identifying any actions that might be helpful to us. Local law enforcement has not been contacted. We have made no requests for federal intervention. None.
While Trump has constitutional authority to take emergency control of the nation's capital, which does not fall under a state, his deployment of the National Guard in Los Angeles in June to respond to protests against immigration raids is being challenged by the California state governor amid criticism of a dictatorial power grab by the president.
They say, we don't need him, freedom, freedom. He's a dictator, he's a dictator. A lot of people are saying maybe we like a dictator. I don't like a dictator. I'm not a dictator. I'm a man with great common sense and I'm a smart person. And when I see what's happening to our cities, and then you send in troops, instead of being praised, they're saying you're trying to take over the republic. These people are sick. But I'm really saying, and I say this to all of you, in a certain way, we should wait to be asked because they have cities that are so under control, out of control.
But Chicago leaders say there is no emergency in the city, with major drops in violent crime, robberies and burglaries in the last 12 months, while urging the president to stay away, as Governor Pritzker articulated.
This is not about fighting crime. This is about Donald Trump searching for any justification to deploy the military in a blue city, in a blue state, to try and intimidate his political rivals. So in case there was any doubt as to the motivation behind Trump's military occupations, take note. 13 of the top 20 cities in homicide rate have Republican governors. None of these cities is Chicago. Donald Trump wants to use the military to occupy a U.S. city, punish his dissidents, and score political points.
While President Trump argues that this is about fighting crime in these democratic cities, naming places like Chicago, New York, Philadelphia and Baltimore as on his radar, cities with high crime rates in Republican states like Memphis or Nashville, Tennessee, Houston, Texas or Indianapolis, Indiana, to mention a few, have yet to be identified as being in need of federal help. And while this raises questions about using federal law enforcement for political reasons, it's the courts that will likely decide on the legality of the president's actions moving forward. I'm Sherwin Bryce-Pease in New York.
From Cape to Cairo, Dakar to Dar es Salaam, rise and shine with Peter Ndoro and Asanda Beda on Channel Africa.
There's a strong call for Africa to leverage its mineral wealth for economic growth. This emerged at the two-day Africa Critical Minerals Summit in Johannesburg, South Africa. The event brings together key stakeholders from across the continent focused on minerals diplomacy and the urgent need to ramp up the beneficiation of Africa's minerals. A central theme on day one was the need for Africa to move beyond simply extracting and exporting raw materials, and for the continent to exploit its mineral wealth to manufacture, industrialize, and create much-needed jobs. Katlego Likhodi has more.
The third installment of the African Critical Minerals Summit is convened under the theme, The True Value of Africa's Critical Minerals, Strategic Focus on Value Addition. The summit put the spotlight on Africa's potential to lead in the global critical minerals sector through beneficiation, policy innovation, and sustainable growth. With geopolitical developments affecting the continent, President of the South African Junior Mining Council, Fred Arendse, says the continent must use its minerals as leverage on the global stage.
We have enough policies in place. What's important is actually to action those policies and to find those synergies. And here we need to thank Donald Trump, the President of America, that has actually put a lot of pressure on Africa, and that actually, action everybody into high mode to see how best do we collaborate as a continent and how best do we explore and exploit the minerals that we have. And I think in time, the US and the West will see, the value that we as a continent can create with or without them.
The summit aims to position the continent not only as a resource hub, but as a leader in shaping the narrative around sustainable extraction, local beneficiation, and inclusive economic growth. Africa Mineral Strategy Group's Patrick Melinda Lubenga says it becomes a race against time to make this a reality.
We host the biggest reserves of these metals required in the transition. But what are we saying as the Africa Mineral Strategy Group is that we will not be suppliers as we have been. We have supplied the world for a very, very long time. This time we want to be strategic partners. And what does that mean? We locally want to process, even if it means primary processing at home. Then we can export. But above all, we want the industries to be here. And it's possible.
The critical minerals are important for the global just energy transition, digital transformation, and opportunities to industrialize economies and create jobs. Energy expert Professor Samson Mampueli speaks on the importance of beneficiation.
This morning's discussions also touched on the issues around the cost of electricity and the fact that it's starting to affect the economy with some of the industries starting to shut down. So that's where critical minerals and local beneficiation comes on board in terms of safeguarding the electricity prices going forward. When we do local beneficiation, we basically reduce the price of the goods, which basically gets passed over to the goods, to the prices of the electricity.
The African Union has been called upon to be intentional in including local beneficiation of critical minerals as part of economic strategies for the future.
South Africa is the #1 supplier of platinum to the USA. But today the USA wants to detect the model of trade via tariffs, which is very unfortunate. DRC has lots of minerals, but they've been cornered by US. So we need to go onto the table and say, this is what we have. It's either you come onto the table on our own terms, not your terms. Then we can negotiate in terms of extraction and in terms of processing in-house, and then in terms of the global market itself. So that is the strength that we have. We can't be begging while we have the resources.
The summit comes as South Africa is formalizing small-scale artisanal mining, with delegates also touching on the issue of illegal mining. The African Free Continental Trade Area has been highlighted as one of the avenues to help economies on the continent. Day one of the 2025 African Critical Minerals Summit drawing to a close with calls for transparency, clean governance, and regional integration in realizing the true potential of the critical minerals. There's also talk of investments in the building of infrastructure for local beneficiation of these minerals. Katlego Likhodi, SABC News in Johannesburg.
Your morning companion with the stories that matter. This is Rise and Shine on Channel Africa. 9 to 12 midday, Central African Time. On the Move with Palisa Tau and Benjamin Mushatama.
Should influencers be expected to be impactful in society? If there is a social or societal conversation that goes up, should we be waiting eagerly to hear what the influencers have to say?
They are more than just entertainers. They are thought leaders to some certain degree. They influence culture, they influence people's thought processes, they set trends, they shape opinions of people. And the sad reality is, although a lot of them don't want to accept it, I think we're getting better with them realizing that embarking in that journey and in that space comes with a certain level of responsibility.
I see it differently in that, professionals are already good at their job, but there is an optionality that they might have to use the position that they hold in society to be able to deliver a message. This year you made the example of actors and actresses. So the same could apply to a sportsman. Just because someone's good at soccer doesn't mean that they have to have an influence over society from a specific standpoint.
Keeping you on the know and on the move. A fresh morning, a fresh perspective. Stay tuned to Rise and Shine on Channel Africa.
Let's get a fresh perspective in terms of what to expect after Rise and Shine on Channel Africa. We get the On the Move team coming in to take us further in terms of our coverage of what's happening on our African continent. Good morning, Benji.
Hey, how are you?
I'm good, thanks.
Good.
Where's your partner in crime today?
No, we you're on your own. We don't want to overwhelm you today.
Thank you so much for being so thoughtful. And also bearing in mind that it's Women's Month.
Happy Women's Month.
I'm getting things happening my way.
Have you noticed on social media, and me and you love social media, right? How, especially with TikTok, where you get people who are just always crying. You this videos, you start a video and there's just tears on this person. And this person is just crying and they're expressing their rage and they're expressing how painful life is, or maybe they've gone through just a breakup and they're just expressing that. And you're is this the platform for your tears? That's what I always wonder. Is this the place that you want to see people see you cry?
I don't know if it's TikTok. I don't know actually if it's social media at all that you should be airing your views out in that way. You need your therapist for that, or your friends and family.
But apparently this is a tactic. It's called rage bait.
Okay.
And it's a way of actually getting people on your platform to sympathize with you. And that's how you get followers, through sympathy. Because people use different types of emotions to grab followers these days.
Wow.
So this is one of those ways.
Is that not some type of mental illness, though, to do that? A psychological issue? Or no, not a mental disorder, but a mental illness issue, as it speaks to I'm trying to go to the psychology term now for this. I don't want to say it the wrong way. I want to sound politically correct. But there's certain strategies that abusers will use.
Yes.
There's certain personality traits that people have that are toxic.
Yeah.
Could that not be seen as one of them?
I think so. I think you're right on this one, because rage bait does strategically use emotions to grab attention.
And you're playing with people's emotions.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's not fair. That's very interesting.
So that one is something that's sticking out for me for the show today. So I'll leave you at that.
Okay. Thank you so much. So On the Move coming up after Rise and Shine. And we close Africa Rise and Shine just like that, and we'll be back tomorrow, 6 till 9. Make sure you tune in. Peter Ndoro will be joining me again, my partner. At least I won't be riding solo again. But anyway, we know people need to take their breaks, so you had a nice one. My name is Asanda Beda. Goodbye for now, and remember to stay tuned for Palesa Tao and Benjamin Mushatama as they come with On the Move. Now, let's get our news. Here's Onele Ntsitsi.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Asanda. Looking at your top story, South Africa's Electoral Commission discusses election preparedness, and Brazil former President Jair Bolsonaro declared a flight risk. Your latest news. Greetings to our listeners. South Africa's Electoral Commission Chief Executive Officer, Sam Mamabulo, has reported the registration of 34 new political parties since the 2024 general election, bringing the total to 472. Mamabulo has briefed the media on key preparations for the 2026 local government elections. He confirmed that municipal councils' 5-year terms will end in November 2026, with elections scheduled between November 2026 and January 2027. The